All right, yeah, so I go by the pseudonym Loothero. I'm the, presentation mode. I'm the co-creator of Loot Survivor, which is a fully on-chain arcade game on StarkNet, and I'm a core contributor to Realms World. Oh, you're trying to line it up? So today I'm going to be giving an overview of the benefits of using the blockchain by comparing a traditional arcade machine like Donkey Kong to a fully on-chain arcade machine like Loot Survivor. So in the image you see here, what's that? Sweet. So what you're looking at here is one of the greatest rugs of all time in competitive gaming. This is a picture of Steve Wiebes, who in around 2004 competed for the all-time world record in Donkey Kong. And he beat the high score in Donkey Kong from a machine in his garage. This was a legitimate machine. He spent insane amounts of time to break the world record. He follows all the rules, which is filming his game live. He completes the world record, films the inside of his arcade cabinet to prove it's all legit, submits the tape to Twin Galaxies, which is the organization responsible for managing those scores. They accept it, and he's crowned the world record holder for Donkey Kong. So this sounds all good. Where's the rug? Well, then, about a year later, they decide his score is actually fake. And they don't have any hard evidence. They just decide that that machine was not legitimate. So instead, they have him show up in person to break the record in person. He proceeds to do this in 2004, breaks the Donkey Kong world record again in person in front of everybody. Then, 10 minutes later, a tape is revealed that shows somebody else getting a score slightly higher than him. So within an hour of him reclaiming the world record, he's then dethroned. Again, where's the rug, right? Someone's just better. 14 years later, it was proved without a shadow of doubt that that tape was recorded on an emulator and was thus fake. So for 14 years, his actual world record score was denied, and instead, there was a fraudulent score above him. So, as we say in crypto fixes this, right? And in this case, it actually does. So during this presentation, like I said, I'm going to be laying out a Donkey Kong arcade machine framed around Steve Wiebes' experience with an on-chain arcade machine using Loot Survivor as an example. And if part of the inspiration for Vitalik to create Ethereum was him getting rugged on his siphon spell in World of Warcraft, part of the inspiration for me creating Loot Survivor the last few years was Steve Wiebes. I mean, I'm a competitive Donkey Kong player myself, and it's insane to think that for 14 years, you were cheated out of the top score. So before I get into the apples to apples comparison, I just want to give a little background on Donkey Kong in case everyone here isn't familiar with how big of a deal it was when it launched. So it was released in 1981 and did, I think, $150 million in revenue in the first year. And to say that Donkey Kong saved Nintendo is not an exaggeration. Nintendo was struggling at the time, and Donkey Kong was just a grand slam. It was also the debut of Mario, the character. So while the game's called Donkey Kong, it's the first debut of Mario, which then turned into one of the biggest IP franchises of all time. So this game was just an absolute breakout success for the whole industry. It saved Nintendo. And from a player perspective, what makes this game so impressive is that 40 years later, people are still competing for the high score. 40 years later, people are still battling. I think in 2021, someone just re-broke the record. People are still playing this game, putting in quarters, trying to break the record. So I'm going to split up the apples to apples comparison into two perspectives. One is going to be a player, and the other one's going to be a builder. So there's going to be like 3 sections for each. We'll do player and then builder. So I want to start with the players, and I want to start with the leaderboard, Because for an arcade machine, that's one of the core incentive mechanisms is you're putting in quarters so that you can be the best and you want everybody to know you're the best. When we look at a traditional arcade machine, you have this highly fragmented leaderboard where you have one set of scores on this machine, one set of scores on this machine. And even then, if you go in and break the score on your local arcade machine, and you're like, look, I'm the best in my town, you show up a week later and the machine's been reset, and now you don't have the high score anymore. When we look at a fully on-chain arcade machine like Loot Survivor, you have one global immutable leaderboard, and there's no way to cheat that game. Like in the case of Loot Survivor, every single action is recorded on chain. So the result is that the world records are settled immediately in real time, and there's never a dispute on was the score legitimate. Even the case in which bugs are revealed in the contract, those bugs get disclosed as part of playing the game so that everybody learns those bugs and those exploits, and everybody can benefit from it. And like in Donkey Kong, this happens too. There's certain they call it pushing points, where there's certain things that are like anomalies where you can get extra points. And that information is not always disclosed to everybody. So you get like a more equal playing field with an on-chain game. So then the other perspective from a player is that you want to play your game. You like this game, you want to play it. If you have a physical arcade machine, you're subject to your arcade, your local arcade. Do they have your game? Is the arcade open, which they're not going to be on nights, maybe weekends? And then furthermore, these machines break. So maybe they have it, but it's broken, and it's too expensive for them to fix. With a fully on-chain game, it's accessible from any internet-connected device anywhere, 24/7. Did you skip a slide? And the last part from the player is that you want prizes. And the traditional arcade machine, it's really one of two models. Either the leaderboard is strong enough, like Donkey Kong, where you're playing to get the top score, or the machine gives you tickets. In the case of the tickets, the prizes are always lame. You're getting like a stuffed animal or something, which nobody wants. In the case of on-chain games, the prizes can be whatever you want. In the case of Loot Survivor, the tokens going into the machine also go out of the machine and go out to players, builders. So yeah, per the meme, tokens are better than tickets. So now I'll switch to the builder perspective. That's going to be like 3 takes, just like the player. So from a builder perspective, you want to manifest your ideas. You have this idea and you want to build. And so say you're back in the 1980s and you see that this arcade boom is coming and you want to participate. Think about how hard it would be to participate in that. You have hardware, software, you have complex distribution, you have all of these bottlenecks for you as a developer to contribute. In the case of a fully on-chain game, you just have pure software, which means if you have a laptop and you have the knowledge and you have the drive, you can deliver the Donkey Kong of on-chain arcade games. It's like equal footing for anybody who has that. And then you also get faster prototyping. You ship this Donkey Kong machine out, and then say 6 months later, you realize, wait a second, this level's a little off and we need to adjust it. You can't really do that because you have this hardware manufacturing line that is distributing these things. So you don't really have rapid prototyping, which makes it hard as a builder. Similar to the players, you want to play your favorite game. As a builder, you want everybody to be able to play your game, right? And so it's kind of the inverse of the availability. And in the case of a physical arcade machine, you have global distribution that's very hard. Even if you, say, created the Donkey Kong machine before Nintendo did, came up with the idea, it's just as good, you do that in your garage, how are you going to distribute this thing to the whole world? You're not set up for that, and it's unlikely you would be able to achieve that. Meanwhile, with on-chain games, you get global distribution by default, and it's very cheap, right? You deploy your contract, everybody in the world has access to it. As a builder, you want to deliver things that last. You want people playing this today, tomorrow, in 10 years, in 40 years, in 100 years, right? Donkey Kong is insane that people have been not just playing it for 40 years, but competitively playing it for 40 years. And I think the picture on the left is pretty self-explanatory. I mean, these physical arcade machines wear out, and if you own one, you have to constantly be maintaining it. And the longer time goes on, the more expensive these components get, especially if you want to use original parts so that your games are legitimate and can be used for world records. And then meanwhile, on the right, we have this new model with the blockchains where we're not talking about $1,000 for 1,000 requests. We're not talking about $10 a month. We're not talking about $10 a year. We're talking about $2 forever, right? I think Loot Survivor cost $3 to deploy, and that's it. It's there forever, fully on chain. And then, yeah, this shows the actual Loot Survivor deployment. So yeah, I think it was like $3 or something here. And then like the scaling ability, now that it's there, it's globally accessible. If 10 people play it, if 1,000 people play it, if 1,000,000 people play it, it doesn't change the cost to me as the deployer. It's there. Now, the clients and the front ends, it may change some of their infrastructure requirements, but as we'll see later, the contract actually includes support for those members. And then this is kind of related to the tickets versus tokens. So as I mentioned earlier, Loot Survivor includes this model where tokens go into the machine, and then they also go out to the machine, to players, to builders, et cetera. And so here you can see a picture of a live leaderboard from Loot Survivor. And on the right, it's the rewards, which is all the tokens being issued out. So you pay a few bucks to go in, and then those tokens immediately go to the top players, and then some will also go to the top builders. And I mean, the amounts are quite significant. I mean, for today, the contract was deployed 3 months ago, so there's a lot of tokens going in, which means the players are getting rewarded. And then lastly, as a builder, you want people to be able to extend your game. And this kind of comes into the longevity of your game. If your game does one thing today, if you get really lucky and produce a Donkey Kong, then maybe people will just do that same game loop forever. But that's really difficult to pull off, especially in today's time where people's attention span is relatively small. So instead, what you want is your game to be extendable so that it does one thing really good today that people like, but then tomorrow somebody else can come in and build on top of it and have it produce something, a better user experience, and for that to be perpetual. So you can single click. So Loot Survivor shipped with the Realms World provided an open source client for the contract. So the contract is just the client, the contract. And in the early days, we didn't have a client when we were writing this code. So we were just using all CLI to play the game. And then Realms World funded the creation of an open source client so that anybody who wanted to play this game had an open source version that you can download yourself. Like you could run the client locally on your machine. You can run StarkNet, Ethereum. You can run this whole stack on your machine and then have no centralization vector. You're not depending on anybody. So we provided that. But the contract also, 25% today of all the tokens going in go to whoever provides the front end. So in the case of the stock one, it goes to the DAO. But then if you click again, so then as more tokens go in, people start seeing this and they think, well, the DAO one's pretty good, but I can build something even better. And because ours is open source, you can just fork ours and then add new features to it. And then click one more. So I think we now have 5 other clients, right? And over time, what this means is we're decentralizing the whole stack. You have different ways that you can experience the game. Some of these have actual advantages where they give you more information or they present the information in a way that's easier for you to understand. But all of these are earning revenue from the game. They're getting 25% of all the revenue that goes into the Loot Survivor arcade machine. Last one. And then recently there's a funny story where the Loot Explorers team, which is one of the best, in my opinion, like artistic teams in the Loot ecosystem right now, they came to me and they said, hey, we want to reskin Loot Survivor, but with like all of our art. Like, can we do that? And they were effectively like asking me for permission to do that. And they weren't aware of all the client rewards. So my response was like, well, not only do you have permission to do it, but the contract will actually pay you to do it. And they were just thrilled by that. And so it went from, should we do this or not, to, well, I think right now it's like $1,000 a month that the client teams are making. And as more tokens go in, this is just going to scale up and create more competition for the best client. So the current ones all look pretty similar. It's funny that the community has just been using different colors to like brand their client, but it's all kind of the same. But over time, I'm hoping we get like mobile versions, et cetera, and there's an incentive to do that. So then, as I lay this out, maybe you're thinking that, well, it's better for the players, it's better for the builders. I certainly think so. So like, why hasn't this been done? Why aren't we doing this? And the main reason is just simply gas. Like, it's just too expensive to do, even if your game, Loot Survivor is designed to take a relatively small number of transactions. When we design the game, we pretty much focus on like 100 transaction limit. Like a top score should require no more than 100 transactions. But still, if the average cost of a transaction is $1, now it's $100 in gas to play your arcade game. I mean, you can buy like AAA titles like Diablo 4 for that cost. No one's going to pay that much to pay an arcade, and that's also not the model. We want a few dollars to play this just like a Donkey Kong machine, inflation adjusted. And so it really is as simple as just gas, right? That is why this hasn't been possible. So fortunately, we started building Loot Survivor almost 2 years ago, and we knew that gas was a problem. We knew that if we deployed it 2 years ago, it would never work. No one would ever play this game. But we also knew that Starkware was building StarkNet, and we knew that they had one of the best teams to actually deliver that vision, and we trusted that vision. And I think when Loot Survivor was originally deployed, only 3 months ago, already the cost to play it is like 20 to 30% cheaper. We didn't have to change the contract at all. We're just getting that through their efficiencies that they're building into their blockchain. And then meanwhile, in 2 weeks now, we're going to get the Ethereum Denkun upgrade, which is going to release proto danksharding, which gives us significantly cheaper L1 gas for rollups. So I think the expectation right now is like a 10 to 50x discount on rollups. So today, if it costs $20 to $30 to play Loot Survivor in gas, which is the main bottleneck, in 2 weeks, just overnight, I mean, literally one block difference, that cost could drop to like $1 to $2, which makes this more reasonable, right? Then it's like $5 to play an arcade game, which makes a lot more sense. So in summary, I think that 2024 has the potential to look a lot like 1981, where Donkey Kong, it was significant, but it wasn't the end-all be-all. It opened the floodgates for all kinds of other big games. Pac-Man, Galaga. I mean, it was just rapid fire after that. And there were sort of 2 tiers to Donkey Kong. One was the tech was still maturing. It was cutting edge tech. But then secondly, it was just figuring out the right models that worked, right? The right game loops, et cetera. But I'm certain that if Donkey Kong could make $150 million in its first year, with the limitations that it had, as I explained, right? Limited by distribution, limited by who can create these, that as fully on-chain game developers, we have an incredible opportunity in 2024 as StarkNet continues to deliver massive optimizations, and we have more Ethereum optimizations like proto danksharding, where we can deliver this fully on-chain arcade experience that resonates. It's not a new model that we're having to push on the masses. It's something they understand. Arcades did really well, and we can just do it better. So thank you all for your time.